Bet the board.
What do you mean you don't bet? I mean, I don't bet. You know, I don't gamble. I don't. I never have, and I never will. Yeah, right. I'll bet you $20 I can get you gambling before the end of the day.
You owe me 15 grand, pal.
Pay him. Pay that man his money.
It's the Bet the Board podcast.
God likes me. He really, really likes me.
In the end, I wound up right back where I started. I could still pick winners, and I could still make money for all kinds of people back home. And why mess up a good thing?
Here's Payne Insider and Todd Fuhrman.
Welcome into the Bet the Board podcast, NFL Week 10 Monday Night Football edition. I am your host, Todd Fuhrman, joined as always by my esteemed colleague and co-host, the one, the only Payne Insider. Payne, it's a Monday. It's the NFL season. I guess that's all I really have to say these days.
Yep, woke up, feeling good about that, 1-0, and here we are, talking more NFL football. Decent game tonight.
It should be a fun one. Two teams with plenty at stake, and before we even started recording, laid out what's so interesting about the muddled mess that's the AFC for the Miami Dolphins, and of course, more about that game when we get to it a little bit later in the program. But like we always do on the Monday show, it's all about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And when we start with the good and what's transpired so far this weekend, I'm giving you the honors to kick things off.
Start at the scene of the crime. Kyler and the Cardinals. Wow. From an efficiency standpoint, we ran into Kyler Murray's career best game. 17 straight completions to end the game. That was a franchise record, broke Carson Palmer's record of 16 straight in 2017. He was on fire, and that's what it can look like with the talent, right? He's got the arm, he's got the mobility. He's finished the week number one in completion rate over expectation at 22%, the second highest mark of the season. You have to go back to week 4 with a Goff performance that was fractionally better. And then you look across the board. It wasn't just Kyler. You had the complimentary ground game, 52% success rate. Defense, and this was maybe the surprise here, defense did something they haven't done all year, and that's get pressure. Came into the game 31st in pass rush win rate. Somehow pressured Rodgers on 58% of his first half dropbacks, despite the offensive line being healthy. That was the most and a half Rodgers has faced since 2018. So all-around effort from the Cardinals. I think we've mentioned this before. It comes from college basketball and Allen Boston, right? The 25-5 rule. A team will play true to its rating for 20 games. It'll look far better than its actual self for 5 games. It'll look miserable for 5 games. You correlate that to the Cardinals. This would be one of those positive outlier games well above their rating. But that coaching staff is getting it together. I know we were a little bit critical of the hire, going back, 18 months ago, almost 2 years ago. The opening press conference was as bad as it could possibly be. But there's still not a ton of talent on that defense. Offensive line still filling in a few positions, although they did add some veterans with a clue and raise the floor of that unit. But you got to give the Cardinals some kudos, and here they sit atop the division.
Yeah, winners of 4 straight, and I guess if we've learned anything about opening press conferences, if UCLA is any indication on the college side, looks can be a little deceiving. But to credit to the Arizona Cardinals, going to the bye with a ton of momentum from 2-4 after a loss to the Green Bay Packers, where they looked ill-prepared to play in that game, to 6-4 now in an NFC race in the West that gets interesting with 2 difficult road games coming out of the bye in a couple short weeks. Payne, I'll give credit to an interim head coach who at least rallied the troops for one game in the form of the New Orleans Saints. They came into this weekend against the Atlanta Falcons 2-7, having lost 7 straight games after winning the first 2 of the season. But Darren Rizzi just got this team to play with a sense of purpose. It was the common sound coming out of the locker room from Alvin Kamara, claimed that they were just missing something, and I feel like we got that thing. Rizzi talked about full buy-in from the organization from top to bottom. Now, we can get to the Falcons a little bit later because it did take the Falcons falling flat on their face, but they just look like a much more confident and buttoned-up unit, even without Chris Olave. Credit to the Saints for upsetting their biggest rival in the league and doing it outright as a 3.5-point home underdog.
You mentioned noise coming from the locker room. Did you manage to listen to Rizzi's post-game presser?
I didn't listen to the whole thing in its entirety.
Okay. So, first of all, Rizzi is one of the more respected and decorated special teams coaches the past few decades, was the assistant head coach for the Miami Dolphins, similar role in New Orleans. He is not only a fantastic special teams coach, but he is that rah-rah guy, so it wasn't shocking to see the team give a little effort. In the post-game presser, apparently Rizzi's day did not start so hot. He was actually 1-1, said he clogged the toilet in the coach's locker room. And he said if that's a sign of things to come, it's going to be a shitty day, no pun intended.
There are usually rules about those things. You have to, it's got to be just for number one in the coach's locker room and such. You got to find another facility elsewhere to take care of that kind of business.
He's like, I like to be an honest coach. I like to be honest with my players, so I'm going to be honest with you guys. But that was that's Darren Rizzi in a nutshell. Now, listen, anytime you can win a game as a coach, that is the ultimate goal, and for fans, that works. For bettors, you kind of want to find out what truly happened, and the Saints basically lived on explosives. Down to down, New Orleans finished with a 36% success rate, good for 22nd out of the 26 offenses. Only the Bears, Cowboys, Texans, Jaguars were worse, could not run the ball. Derek Carr just started hot, and we thought that he could show decently well here because Atlanta just doesn't get pressure, and so he hit MVS on multiple explosives, and that basically changed the direction of the game. And then the Falcons had multiple empty trips. In the first half alone, Atlanta had trips to the Saints' 35 and 11-yard lines, came away with 0 points. Last 3 drives of the game all reached Saints territory, 0 points there. Koo missed or had blocked, 3 field goals in the game, and it ends in a 3-point loss. So credit to Rizzi for, I would say, the energy and effort we saw. I don't know how repeatable.
Oh, it's not like this team is rattling off a 6-game winning streak by any stretch of the imagination. I would echo your sentiments there completely, that it took the perfect storm of the Saints actually being, I'll guess, like you said, we'll call it semi-buttoned up and hitting the big plays, and the Falcons playing arguably one of their worst games that we've seen, from them. In quite some time. So credit to the interim coach. We'll see exactly what this means going forward, and they'll get a rested Cleveland Browns team this weekend coming into the Dome to see if it's easily repeated. Anything else from the good that you wanted to highlight?
I was a little surprised how short your list was initially, and then I start looking around, and I'm like, holy shit, this was kind of a weird week. There wasn't a ton of
I did find one other that I could add.
Yeah, go for it.
So I don't know how we take what we saw in D.C. between the Commanders and the Steelers, but I guess I have to give marks to the Steelers for what they were able to do on the defensive side of the ball and kind of slow down Washington's offense. They made life difficult on a rookie quarterback, and credit to Mike Tomlin, winning yet again coming out of a bye, now 27-6 in 33 starts against rookie quarterbacks. And the one thing that stood out to me, Payne, maybe more so than anything else for Tomlin, broke tendency. We saw a conservative head coach, at least that's usually been him by nature, allow for a fake punt inside their own 20-yard line. Perfect play call, just wasn't executed. And then at the end of the game, the Steelers give Russell Wilson carte blanche to come out there, and I don't think they were going to go for it, but to at least try the hard count and draw the Commanders off rather than just coming out in punt formation and giving Washington a chance to get the ball back for a game-winning field goal.
A little frustrated because we were higher on Pittsburgh than just about anybody in terms of the betting space, but there's a lot of guys that I respected that really liked their under this season, and there's no reason to tie your money up for 6 months on battles. I would say the Steelers' offense is aggressive, and they're hitting chunk plays with Russell Wilson's aggressiveness and those outside receivers with their ability, specifically Pickens, just to win any 50-50 ball. I mean, if it's 50-50, it's like 70-30 with Pickens, maybe even more.
Dude's a freak.
The down-to-down success isn't there. But the explosiveness has been. And that's the one difference with the Steelers offense and Russ Wilson operating it. To your point, we did see out of the bye Tomlin come up with a little bit of a different wrinkle, a different game plan. The Commanders' offense wasn't overly elite by any means. 18th in EPA per play. A lot of cover one blitz, which is what Tomlin likes to run against mobile quarterbacks. It's now on film. Does that hinder potentially the ability this coming week against Monken and Lamar, having seen that approach applied to a mobile quarterback in Jaden Daniels? We'll see. I know we'll probably talk about that game on Thursday, but certainly kudos to the Steelers. A little bit of a battle in that game early in the week. Lots of Commanders money. Anytime it hit 3, we got Steelers money, and game day money even at 2.5 on the Steelers. So a little bit of a battle there with differing viewpoints. Kind of what I'm hearing, or at least early in the week, on Pittsburgh and Baltimore in terms of a side perspective. There could be another little battle.
Yeah, one of the marquee matchups. Going to look forward to breaking that down in greater detail on Thursday for two teams fighting to stay atop the AFC North between these familiar franchises, and we actually should have both starting quarterbacks out there for a change, which is something that we haven't been so fortunate to have with a lot of matchups occurring in Week 17 and Week 18. So before we get to the bad, I wasn't sure if there was anything else from the good that you wanted to touch on.
No, I think we can move forward if you're ready.
Yeah, let's do it. So when we go to the bad, normally we start at the top of the show with Sunday Night Football and kind of highlight some of the things that we saw. I know folks on the East Coast don't always stay up until the wee hours of the night to watch games unfold. And Payne, I'm sure there were plenty that went to sleep at halftime, seeing the Houston Texans with a commanding 23-7 lead, closed in that game as much as a 4-point underdog once Nico Collins was officially inactive about 90 minutes before kickoff. And I'm going to put both teams in the bad. Detroit, they deserve credit for coming back and getting the win, erasing that kind of deficit on the road. It shows championship mettle and character. But Jared Goff finished the first half 7 of 17 with 3 interceptions after putting together historic numbers over the previous 4 to 6 weeks, seeing his odds to win MVP completely shortened. Finishes the game with 5 interceptions in total. But I guess when the Houston Texans' second-half offense has been non-existent, not just against the Lions, but since Week 6, the last time they scored a touchdown after the break, it's as much a ringing endorsement of where they are along the offensive line, some of their skill position talent. So it's rare, despite one team erasing a multi-score deficit, that I'm going to put both teams in the bad just for different aspects of what we saw on Sunday Night Football between the Lions and Texans.
I mean, Goff had been on a heater. We've been talking about it. But give DeMeco Ryans credit. I mean, this is the reason he's one of the more respected defensive minds in football. He got his green dot back. He at least had a game plan to go off of, right? He kind of knew how Ben Johnson wanted to attack that style of a defense. We saw it last year in the playoffs when Detroit traveled to San Francisco, DeMeco Ryans' former stopping point there, or prior stopping point. And I think he had a decent idea of what Ben Johnson and the Lions wanted to do. One of the weirder games for me, and I've had trouble kind of digesting it. So just full disclosure, you know, we went under 50 in this game, and I think if you just gloss over and see maybe the first half, to your point, and then people went to bed, you would assume that the total was quite lucky to get home. Kind of had a differing view on that, and the game state couldn't have been any worse for an under, and it still went under. You mentioned the Texans' offense. Coming into that game, we knew the offensive line was abysmal. They were down a starter. You don't have Nico. You don't have Diggs. My understanding is Tank Dell, had the other gentleman been out there, obviously Diggs is out for the year, but had Nico and Diggs been out there, Tank Dell would not have played through that back injury. So he was far less than 100%. The first half offense was a total anomaly. Houston had a 37% success rate overall, well below league average, just 14% on the ground, which is abysmal. And, you know, Bobby Sloak wants to fire up that ground game. And so the Texans getting out as the underdog, scoring 23 points on just 166 yards, then forces the favorite, who has an elite offense, to play catch-up. It is the worst possible game state for and under in that situation where the dog gets a bunch of fraudulent points and you now have this elite offense chasing. Still got under. To your point, I think Goff and the offense figured it out a little bit in the second half. I mean, 62% drop back success rate. Offense averaged more than a point per snap in the second half. And so, that was a good result for us with that staying under. And then obviously the Lions getting out there and getting a win, helping us towards our win total. It was just one of the more weirder games, I thought, of the weekend. Just very tough to interpret if you weren't truly breaking this down snap by snap after the fact.
It's a full sports cliche, but it was as true an epitome of a tale of two halves as you're going to see in this league. I mean, if you went and you watched the second half first, you thought that the Detroit Lions were going to run away and hide. And if you watched the first half of the game entirely as an isolated episode, you thought there was no chance that the Lions would be able to get back in that football game.
And even the first half with some of the scoring, right? I mean, the lone Lions touchdown drive required a third and 16 conversion. You had the 3rd and 10 before the half to, John Mechie. I don't know if you had that on the bingo card this evening on 3rd and a mile. John Mechie
good day
scoring
for him,
touchdowns.
And congratulations to everything he's gone through off the field to get his first career NFL touchdown.
Absolutely. Yeah. In terms of the Texans' second half offense, lost about 60% of a point every time they snapped the ball in the second half. Could not run it, could not throw it. 25% success rate. And that's kind of the offense we expected for the entire game to some degree, right? I mean, C.J. Stroud is playing behind an offensive line that's bottom 5 in the league, and you got Nico and Diggs out. So it's an uphill battle right now.
We mentioned the Saints in the good and highlighted some of the Falcons bad. I'll just go through some of the things real quick, and then we can kind of pivot away. I mean, Kirk Cousins quoted after that game, was certainly a tough loss. He finished the game 23 of 38, 306 yards just picked off. We had chances to take the lead late in the game, and not being able to do it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. This is one that you're sick over. As Younghoe Koo couldn't make field goals. They left about 13 points out there. They couldn't execute the end game situation. So with the good comes the bad, and we highlighted the Saints, but I just wanted to mention that for some of the Falcons' trials and tribulations. But for me, Payne, the bad, you want to talk about right result from a betting standpoint, wrong result on the football field. If Jacksonville and Minnesota played that game another 99 times, I'm not sure Jacksonville, given what I saw offensively from that group, finds a way to cover any number, let alone the closing price tag as a 7-point dog. Hold the Vikings to just 12 points because of some Sam Darnold miscues, but we're reminded why Mac Jones lost his job in New England. That Jacksonville offense, when we didn't think it could get worse, lacked punch, big play potential, and Brian Thomas more or less an afterthought.
Yeah, that was one of the dogs that covered yesterday. There was a bunch of them. That one probably did not deserve to get home. And all signs point to this coaching staff in Jacksonville being on their way out at some point. Backup quarterback, multiple starters out along the O-line from injuries or trades. Beat up receiver room. You mentioned Brian Thomas. He's playing through something that probably he shouldn't be playing through. Even the guys outside of Brian Thomas, there's a few of them playing at far less than 100%, especially in that receiver room. Scoreboard was close. Jaguars, somehow covered, just not even actually close to what unfolded on the field. The Vikings had a positive 16% net success rate. They just imploded in the money areas, right? 2 turnovers in the red zone, another one in the green zone. The Vikings were really dominant down to down. They were able to overcome not scoring a touchdown and turning it over 3 times. Was seeing that becoming some history. Teams with that combination of 0 touchdowns, 3 turnovers had lost 195 straight games. That's how dominant the Vikings were down to down. I believe they had possession for 43 minutes in this game.
Every time I flipped to the game, I didn't know if it was make it, take it. Like you were playing against your little brother in the driveway, the way that the Vikings always had the ball. Now, silver lining for the Jags, I actually like the white helmets. I'm not sure if that was a hit.
Great
confused me at first, going, what the hell is this? What am I looking at? But the white helmets did grow on me for the 17 minutes that the Jacksonville Jaguars actually possessed the football. Other bad that you thought was worth mentioning for our loyal listeners?
Flacco?
Yeah, we can hit on Flacco. I'm going to give you the honors because you're a man who for multiple weeks said there's a reason that Joe Flacco is out of the league, and at 40 years old, he wasn't going to come in and be the second coming, and we got the full Flacco experience on display with the Colts as a home underdog against the Buffalo Bills. Unfortunately for us, sitting under 48 in that game, Joe Flacco had to complete a pass that meant absolutely nothing to the Colts, but cost us plenty in the waning seconds.
Unfortunately, price got in the way of my belief. Once we got the 4.5 with robust game day limits, it was too much to pass on, and you felt pretty good as a Colts backer with a 13-10 lead after Flacco gave the Bills their first 10 points and Josh Downs dropped a walk-in touchdown. Like, literally, the Bills' first 10 points came on 29 yards of offense. And we saw the Colts regather themselves, led by 3 with about 5 minutes to go, in spite of those 10 points they gave away, in spite of Josh Downs dropping a walk-in touchdown. You're like, okay, this feels pretty good. And then, poof, from up 3 to down 7 at the break. To your point, the far more discouraging part of this game was the total. We talked a little bit about it on Thursday. Kind of had to be coy because I knew our group was lining up a bet on this under. We went under 48.5 and 48. Again, you get the 10 fraudulent points out of the gate. Short fields all game because of unforced turnovers. 2 touchdowns the final 3 minutes. Flacco picking up the 4th and 8, scrambling outside the pocket and throwing back across his body to extend the final drive there. And I said this to you yesterday. I'm fine with the Jets' loss. Bad team runs into an elite effort, just a bad bet, complete wrong side, you move on. What shakes you, though, are the great bet dead right sides that lose. North Texas on Saturday, where somehow North Texas has trips to the Army, 10-yard line, 1-yard line, 11-yard line, 2-yard line, and comes away with just 3 total points, right? A clear TD gets taken off the board, 2 picks in the end zone. When you bet an underdog in a game where the total closes 68.5 and the favorite only scores 14, if you did the blind fold test there, you would have said, hey, how do I get 100x more on this game than what we actually bet on, right?
You have to keep yourself from crying when you watch games like that.
And so somehow with this North Texas game and the Colts under, we ended up juicing out on our biggest stuff this week, despite those 2 disasters. Could have been a monster week for us, but those are the types of games that just somehow got to mentally overcome them. Like, okay, wake up the next day, we're good, and you move on. But in the moment, they're frustrating.
You trust the process, and you try and figure out exactly if it was a bad bet, a bad handicap, or just bad luck. And it becomes extremely difficult for anybody who has aspirations of doing this a little bit more seriously. We know we've brought our listeners along slowly over the last 10-plus years, but it's the mental gymnastics that makes this one of the toughest professions that's out there. The same way a lot of our folks that listen with a trading background who are working on Wall Street have to deal with some of that stuff as well, and the inevitable volatility that comes along with it. From the bad to the ugly, and again, I don't want to take low-hanging fruit, but I feel it's worth mentioning because every time we think they've hit rock bottom, they reinvent exactly where the floor is. And Payne, the Bears now have gone 2 full games without scoring a touchdown, 142 total yards in windy weather at Soldier Field against the much-maligned Patriots. But again, it's the energy and effort that's just not there. And if it wasn't bad enough for the Bears, I'm getting inundated with text messages. You know, most of my friends, diehard Bears fans, live in Chicago. Matt Eberflus does a weekly interview on, ESPN 1000 or whatever the station is there these days, has multiple cell phone calls drop out, and one of the hosts basically blasts him saying Eberflus was as prepared for the interview and his cell phone reception as the offense has been each of the last 2 weeks. I mean, just when you think it's gone from bad to worse, the Bears are going to find themselves on the clock potentially with a top 5, top 7 overall pick when you look at the upcoming schedule that suggests there's better than a non-zero chance they may not win another game this year.
Yeah, Eberflus has got to be on the way out. I don't know when that will be. Shane Waldron isn't good either. And Caleb Williams is struggling. Took 9 sacks yesterday. Bears finished 25th out of 26 offenses in EPA per play. If you look at this, and every time they snapped the ball, lost about 37% of a point, just a 33% success rate. The only teams in that family of shit, so to speak, yesterday were offenses with backup quarterbacks. Jacksonville, who we just talked about, the Cowboys, who went to their third-string quarterback at one point, right? There was a Trey Lance sighting, I believe.
23 passing attempts for less than 50 yards for Cooper Rush leading the offense.
So that was the family that the Bears shared yesterday. I think what has to be so frustrating for Bears fans and what makes it worse for Eberflus is this is how it looks 3 straight weeks coming out of the bye when you went into the bye with such high hopes, right? Bears fans were going to that bye riding high. And they're like, boy, we're going to make a run now. We started to get it figured out with the offense and Caleb, and now they're going to expand upon that offense out of the bye. And they just got gut punched. And I think that sudden shock is making this even tougher to absorb if you're a Bears fan post-Week 10.
You gave credit to the Arizona Cardinals, and rightfully so, for their dominant performance, but how much of what we saw in Glendale yesterday is a reflection of where the Jets were off a mini-bye, saying the right things about keeping their season on track with the second-half comeback on Halloween against the Houston Texans? Payne, I don't know what the hell they did the last 10 days, but practicing football was probably outside the top 100 list of activities for that organization as a whole.
What's crazy is they found real success running the ball. They just didn't run it enough or couldn't run it enough once the game state got out of hand. I mean, the Jets actually led this week in rushing success rate at 59%, but it's just tough to run when you're down multiple scores. And you thought at least initially there was going to be a back-and-forth nature to this game. The difference was it was 14-6 to start. Arizona's scoring touchdowns. The Jets are kicking field goals. And then it started to balloon a little bit. My biggest criticism is the defense, right? I mean, it's a mini-bye. It's 10 days to prepare. That's what Jeff Ulbrich came up with as a respected defensive mind. And I hate doing this, but you have to question some of the effort that was out there.
I'll ask the question.
Especially in the second
Some of the
half.
effort?
Yeah.
What effort?
Yeah. I mean, listen, and for all his faults, and there were plenty, and I wasn't necessarily the largest fan, but the one thing you can say is, like, Robert Saleh's defense has never fucking quit. Like, even last year when there was no shot the offense was going to score, they didn't quit. They still battled through injuries. They still battled no matter what was going on the other side of the ball. This defense this season in some of these games, specifically yesterday, you can't quite say the same thing about. And now you start to wonder about all these decisions from Woody Johnson. Again, I'm not a Robert Saleh guy, but I don't think you see that effort. I don't think you see that defensive performance if he's leading the way.
No, it's a franchise right now that's rudderless, to say the least, and you begin to wonder if you're bringing Aaron Rodgers back for a second season. You've made the trade for Devontae Adams. You've made your bed with Hassan Reddick, and you begin to wonder where this group goes from there. For a franchise and a fan base that suffered, one of the longest postseason droughts in the NFL, it doesn't appear that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and no reason to believe this coming week that suddenly they'll get things right as a short home favorite against the Indianapolis Colts. But any other?
I think it's done and over with. I think you strip this down to the bones. You get your new GM, and you get what you can out of the parts. Hope that a contender is close, and maybe they overpay for a couple of guys, and you start this rebuild process. That's kind of how I would go about this, because they're not close.
As you like to say,
they're
just
not
rip
close.
the Band-Aid off and be done with it, rather than kind of delaying the inevitable that it appears the Jets are dealing with now. Any other ugly before we quick hit the look-ahead numbers and some major market movement from Week 10 to Week 11?
No.
All right, you can follow Payne on social media at Payne Insider. I'm Todd Fuhrman. You can follow me there for all things Bet the Board. Be sure to follow the podcast at Bet the Board Pod for all of your NFL and college football needs, now that the NASCAR season has come to a screeching halt with the championship yesterday in Phoenix. Look ahead numbers, Payne. We mentioned the Bears, and you see that poor performance reflected in the betting market, where Green Bay was a modest field goal favorite coming off of the bye, headed to Soldier Field for the first installment of the annual rivalry between these two franchises. And now, looky here, Green Bay has ballooned out to a 6.5-point chalk And I'm not imagining there are going to be a ton of people, at least right now, running to the window to back the Bears as nearly a touchdown home underdog.
Yeah, I mean, at some point there's going to be a buy because the price is, interesting. But Green Bay off the buy, to your point, likely getting Jordan Love a little bit healthier is partly the reason for this move. Obviously, the Bears' effort yesterday leaves much to be desired. And when you're kind of getting manhandled by a very bad football team, it signals some things. And these are tough to quantify. Let's just put it that way. Because we discussed some quit from Chicago in the Arizona game. And now all of a sudden you see it on full display. And so if you said, hey, the Bears are going to give me 100% effort here, you let this thing tick up to 7 and you kind of just plug your nose and go. But it's tough to want to back a team that is shown some quit.
Yep, it makes it difficult. A rivalry game, maybe you get a little bit more out of them, but win one for the Gipper type shit. But until we actually see that unfold on the football field, tough to me.
Well, I don't think they like the
Gipper.
That's
a problem. That's a problem. I was going to say,
problem.
When you don't like the skipper, a mutiny is much more likely than anything else that we're seeing in little fits and spurts for Chicago thus far. Lions taking on Jacksonville. This is more injury-driven, so no reason to try and spend time here. Lions were a 10-point favorite and look-ahead number now out to 13. They continue to cover numbers. And if you have bought Lions at the bottom at -3, you even get a push out of that. For official grading purposes, though, it'll go down as one of the rare ATS failures for Dan Campbell on a closing number anywhere from 3.5 to 4. Minnesota Vikings talked a little bit earlier in the show about how they were box score winners despite not getting you to the window from an ATS standpoint. 5.5 on a look-ahead number, now out to 6.5. Tennessee continues to be one of the more intriguing teams for the betting market to price. They had a touchdown taken off the board at the tail end of the first half. End up losing the game 27-17, but that was more scoreboard cosmetics with a late touchdown pass from Will Levis, who appears still not to be the answer. But the game I do want to get your quick take on before we close the book on the look-ahead numbers.
Well, that one.
Oh, go ahead.
That one's interesting to me. Like at some point, you're going to get a buy on Tennessee.
At some point, you're going to get a lot of things.
If you look yesterday, that wasn't a terrible offensive performance. Right? I mean, 46% success rate on offense over, 0.1 EPA per play on offense. There was some positive things there. They were able to get the ground game going a little bit, Tennessee. That was a little bit of a misleading score there, I felt like. And so
we keep saying this Chargers defense hasn't been pushed. Tennessee at least had a little bit of success moving the football there.
The market thinks they're going to be pushed a little bit this week. What was your next game?
Next game was the Broncos and Falcons. We didn't even talk about that game at the top.
Broncos and Falcons. Broncos-Falcons, I would say that move is currently justified because Atlanta's a little phony right now, and I think that's the view of not just myself, other respected bettors as well, and Denver certainly performed better than, well, they covered quite easily, but in terms of probably should have won the game outright yesterday.
I mean, if they
against the Chiefs, and I think the positive was seeing Bo Nix, right, against a defense of that caliber. We had seen whatever ceiling Bo Nix has. We've seen some of those performances, right, Thursday night against the Saints, against Carolina's defense at home. This was the first, he performed quite well against a defense that we hold in high regard. And so I thought there was a lot of positive coming out of that game for Denver.
Hey, we'll give Sean Payton credit. He went out, got his guy, and he has clearly gotten this team to perform to a level that I'm not sure everyone thought was possible, so much so that Denver very much in the thick of things as far as being an AFC wildcard, largely because of defense that's been outstanding. And to your point, if Denver scores a single solitary point, or I should say at least 3 points in the second half, they come away with a win, put together a perfect drive, and more often than not, you're going to make a 35-yard field goal on the road in hostile territory. You close as a full touchdown underdog. So Denver should have come away with the win, but to your point, the cover never really in doubt in any capacity.
That's the pressure game, right? Denver gets pressure. Kirk Cousins struggles against it. Atlanta does not get pressure, so you think bow's going to be kept pretty clean here.
Yeah, interesting game that I wouldn't have circled that I think will be fascinating chess match on the Sunday afternoon slate, given some of the other marquee matchups. They're going to have a lot of eyeballs on it, most notably Kansas City at Buffalo and, of course, Seattle coming out of the bye against the San Francisco 49ers, trying to keep their season headed in the right direction. But no discussion of the NFC West is complete without the final game on the Week 10 schedule, and that'll pit the Miami Dolphins on the road against the Los Angeles Rams. Total in this game has come down a touch that we're looking at 48.5 painted across the market. The Rams, we'll call them a 2.5 minus 20 consensus favorite, but if you like the dog, there are still some threes out there. 3 flat out here in the desert and plus 3 minus 19 offshore. The Rams, Payne, they've won 3 straight games since starting the season, 1-4. They come in off a 26-20 win at the Seahawks. Matthew Stafford, of course, completing a game-winning 39-yard touchdown pass in overtime to Demarcus Robinson. It was Stafford's 46th career game-winning drive in the fourth quarter overtime, tied for the 6th most all-time, right there alongside Matt Ryan. The Dolphins, meanwhile, they've lost 3 straight games, including the past 2 on field goals in the final seconds. With a loss tonight, it would be the worst 9-game start for the Fins as a franchise since 2021 when they started the campaign 2-7. But Miami has shown a hell of a lot more in the way of life offensively since Tua's return to the lineup. Devin Achane has been outstanding as a runner and as a receiver. You're seeing flashes of Raheem Mostert, and we know what Tyreek Hill can do with a starting quarterback. The problem being, Payne, is we're still very much in the dark as far as Tyreek Hill's status for tonight's game. But if you read the tea leaves and the way the betting market is responding, signs pointing to him being more likely to be out than in as this number continues to inch towards that key.
I know he traveled to L.A. We'll see how this unfolds. But
there's a lot of other things in L.A. off the field that I'm sure Tyreek would like to chase as well.
Jesus Christ, the market is certainly saying some things. We were queuing up something on this game that we probably are not going to be able to queue up. So feel a little bit better, maybe peeling back the curtain on some of those things. When I looked at both of these offenses against the defenses, the matchups were kind of signaling out here. Both offenses run a lot of outside zone. Both defenses 20th or worse defending those types of runs. Both defenses, bottom 5 defending play-action passes. Rams dead last defending wide receiver passes off play-action, although trending slightly better. Dolphins use top 3 rate of play action. Rams use a top 10 rate of play action. So that was going to be, and it still has the potential to be, even if Tyreek isn't out there, quite useful. Rams are bottom of the barrel defending throws 10-plus yards downfield. That's where you would have liked Tyreek. This was really going to be, I think, a breakout spot for Tyreek Hill in our estimation. Now, we'll see if that gets nixed. Now, again, like he flew out with the team. He's traditionally played through a lot of nagging injuries. So I do think this is maybe closer to a true game time decision than maybe the market is suggesting. But I got a text message from his we'll call him the handler. He's more than the handler to him, and they want to give this a go. I just don't know if it's possible. So we will see. In terms of other things, right? The Rams are also horrific defending running back passes. It's why we've seen Achane's prop number, along with the potential of the Tyreek Hill situation, propelling Achane to a very uncommon number for running backs. Achane is really being priced like a wide receiver 2 right now in the receiving market, and for good reason, right? 30% target share with 2 under center. You would think all of the window dressing gives some issues to the Rams linebackers. Tua has also been getting rid of the ball lightning quick. McDaniels is doing that for multiple reasons, but it makes it really tough to get pressure on an offense when they're operating it like that, and the Rams are dead last in the NFL defending passes thrown in under 2.5 seconds. So there were some things here for both offenses. I also thought you were potentially buying the Rams offense a touch low with Puka Nacua getting ejected last week and completely changing that game plan that they had instituted all week on the fly, and so I thought the Rams offense probably were going to perform a little bit better here. Also a lot of moving parts, like past Tyreek Hill in terms of injuries, right? Right tackle Austin Jackson is out tonight for the Dolphins. To me, not a massive thing. Kendall Lamb has actually been better as a pass protector if you look in his last 700 snaps than Austin Jackson. He's got playoff experience, so I don't think that's a massive drop-off. The Rams are also getting 2 starting offensive linemen back in Steve Avila and Jonah Jackson, so things were kind of like trending up for this to be a little bit of an offensive outburst here. The Dolphins are getting some help back on defense. Not sure how much it'll matter. That unit right now is going through some things. Zach Sealer, starting defensive tackle back. Kadir Kahu, starting slot corner. Storm Duck, a rotational secondary piece. All those 3 guys seem to be back. Javon Holland, also quite questionable for this one. Had some limited practices later in the week. I know he did travel as well. So we'll see. He's a game time decision. But, yeah, getting to 3 on this is certainly a tall order. This is really, it's so funny. I'm one of the local guys from Miami who covers this team, and you kind of teased it at the top. If Miami somehow wins this game, they're 1 back of the playoffs in the loss column. If they lose it, and the draft was tomorrow, they'd be picking 3rd overall. So we've kind of been maybe suggesting vital games the last 3 weeks, season on the line. Week 4 now, season on the line for the Miami Dolphins, it would seem. So
it's like a Steve Howe 6th chance for Miami to get themselves back on track.
That's right. So for me, at this price point, just being we were looking over here, but kind of biding our time looking for some Tyreek Hill information, and that will ultimately determine whether we go or on the sidelines here.
Very curious to see as we get information that continues to break throughout the course of the day if Hill will or won't be in the lineup. But one player that we do know will be in the lineup is featured on our prop that comes in from our in-house handicapper, Billy, to give you an opportunity to get to the window on Monday Night Football.
Good afternoon, Bet the Board listeners. We are back with our Week 10 Monday Night Football prop. We are going to go with Raheem Mostert under 46.5 rush plus receiving yards. This is good down to 43.5. Couple notes here. Raheem Mostert's had some fumbling issues as of late. The one against Buffalo was a big shift in momentum there. And Mike McDaniel's been asked quite a bit in his pressers about the usage of Jalen Wright and when are we going to see him get more touches. Historically, Mike McDaniel's been pretty stubborn. He likes to play the guys that he is loyal to, but there's no doubt more pressure with Mostert's fumbling and the speed and the ability that you see when Jalen Wright touches the ball that we may start to see a little shift in usage here. Raheem Mostert's over-under for rush attempts is right around 8.5, so there's a lot of uncertainty there. And when you look at Raheem Mostert, he's another running back. We've talked about it before with someone like Najee Harris, who he runs hard, but he does get banged up frequently, and he's definitely more of an injury-prone type back. When we look at his other numbers around betting shops, his rush yards are priced around 33.5 juice to the under, and his receiving total is right around 7.5. So this gives us some wiggle room here, going rush plus receiving under. I would lean more towards his rush yards under instead of his receiving yards. So I definitely like this position for us at 46.5. When we look at the Rams, last 4 weeks, Rams are third in rush defense EPA. They're third in rush defense success rate. Even if we include that Week 5 game against the Packers, they're still in that time span of weeks 5 through 9. They're still fifth in rush defense EPA. This is a defensive line in front seven that just continues to get better as the season goes on. It's a solid unit, and they get to take on the Dolphins tonight, who will not have right tackle Austin Jackson. So we'll see Kendall Lamb filling in for him at that spot. I mentioned it before. The lone concern really is McDaniel and how he's going to use these 3 backs. And obviously the Tyreek Hill injury news is going to be significant when we think about the game script. I do expect Tyreek to play, but when inactives come out or when we get more news later in the day, that's something to watch if Tyreek is ruled out. Maybe how Miami's going to go about attacking the Rams. But in general, like this prop, like it down to 43.5. Last note, if you've been listening to this pod for a while, I really cannot overstate the importance of having multiple outs. If you live in a state with legal sports betting, there really isn't a reason not to have 4 or 5 of these operators funded. So, sometimes I'll see comments like, oh, the numbers moved. But then I'll go look at 3 or 4 different shops, and it's moved at 2 shops, but it hasn't moved at the other 2. So just make sure if you're living in a state with legal sports betting that you have 4 to 5 of these legal operators funded. Best of luck, guys.
Well, we see where Billy's going, Payne, focusing on the backfield with one member of the dynamic duo. You talked about Devin Achane potentially being much more valuable as a receiver, given some of his capabilities and his unique set of skills. Billy looking to focus on Raheem Mostert, underwhelming at the window in terms of his overall level of production.
Speaking of unique set of skills, boy, I watched a Liam Neeson movie this weekend. It was fucking terrible.
Which one? Did you go to the theater or to sneak out? Or?
Yeah, I snuck out. Absolution. Now, I'm one of those guys who kind of like...
You love a good action flick.
When I go to
I'm the one that you make fun of. I tell you, I can take him or leave him.
I just need to get away for like 2 hours sometimes, right? You just need to get away. And so the bar for going to a movie is much lower for me than you.
True. That is a very good point.
Because you're willing, like you're so obsessed with college football, right? Like the day could be going as bad as possible, and you're tuning into Hawaii at
I kind of forced
10 o'clock.
You know what? I've cut off some of the late games. I mean, this week had to watch the BYU-Utah game, of course, with a little bit of investment there.
Yes, we did.
At the same time, it's almost like punishment. If the day is going poorly, I force myself to try and watch these games to see if there's something we can learn to apply going forward. So it's kind of a love-hate relationship with the college game and what it's been over the last couple of years.
Yes. So getting back to Billy's point here, there was actually a lot of sharp money under Mostert rushing yards against Buffalo. That didn't come to fruition. One specific drive kind of nixed that. McDaniels is super, super loyal, and that relationship's been going on a long time. You would think there is some time for Jalen Wright in this spot, just based upon Raheem Mostert's like fumbling issues. They've come at the most costly times in the biggest portions of these games against the Colts. Massive fumble at midfield with a game where your air quote season is on the line. Last week, massive fumble against Buffalo at just the inopportune time. So at some point, you have to hold guys accountable. And the best guys to hold accountable who will understand it are guys that you have a personal relationship with and have had for many years. And so when you're not holding guys accountable, it kind of permeates throughout the rest of the locker room that guys can get away with shit. And so this is the right guy to do it with because he'd be understanding of it. So it would make a world of sense if Jalen Wright got a little bit more burn, but we'll ultimately see how that unfolds.
You mentioned sneaking away to the movie. Did you check out the Yellowstone season premiere last night, or is that's on the docket for dinner time, knowing your normal Monday schedule today?
I actually snuck it in last
night. You did?
It was too good not
to. I have not gotten there yet. Will I be excited? Will I be disappointed? You know I'm more of the slow burn guy. You're the guy that goes, what the fuck is going on? Let's just get to the point.
No. I can do a slow burn if it ends up turning into an absolute inferno.
Okay, that's fair.
But a lot of the things that you send my way that are a slow burn, they never get there, or you see it before it's coming. So that's my biggest pet peeve, are the ones with the slow burn where the movies want to be like, oh, there's going to be this twist or turn, and you spot the twist or turn an hour before it comes. Those are the ultimate fails for me. That Carney movie there with
Bradley Cooper.
Bradley Cooper. I mean, that 7 minutes into the movie, you knew how it was.
I mean, that's when you could just pick.
So that was the worst slow burn ever.
When you can just walk out. It's like some of the games we bet 7 minutes in, we know how they're going to end.
So yeah, I mean, it's Yellowstone. I thought it was
watch
good.
I'm going to watch
some
it anyway,
build up.
So I mean,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, the one that's interesting to me, and what is it called? Landsman that they're kind of
I think it's the
promoting.
new one Taylor Sheridan's behind.
Yes. Apparently, he bought that 4-6's ranch. I did not know that.
I mean, the dude has done nothing but churn out winners lately, and he pretty much has carte blanche with Paramount in his deal to continue producing shows. So I'm not sure if you got into like Tulsa King or...
I'm into Tulsa King.
What's the prison movie? I can't remember with Jeremy Renner. Not movie, but the TV show that was there.
Didn't watch that.
So that one's not bad either if you're looking for something. But yeah, very rarely has Taylor Sheridan turned out a dud with the heater that he's been on. So there is no doubt I will have that on the docket to try and watch the season opening episode of Yellowstone a little bit later today when I get a window to make it happen.
I haven't been on the Jeremy Renner kick since like The Town in Wind River. I've kind of been out on Jeremy Renner recently.
I mean, a lot of his stuff isn't great, but I think it's going to drive me nuts. And as we talk about all the time, it's great podcasting because it's going to sit with me until I figure out what the hell the name of that show is. Mayor of Kingstown, that's what it is. So,
okay, yeah, I have not seen that.
Yeah, not a bad watch there if you're looking for something else. Not during football season, but when you get to the spring and
spring,
the dog days of the sports calendar.
All that stuff.
But, all right, we've done enough rambling. I missed that last part.
Yeah, you ignored it. You I just said it's a good show for the off season or retirement, either or, both.
Well, never mind. I'm not going to take that low hanging fruit that's coming. Not going to take that low hanging fruit. You want to talk about a cliffhanger if our listeners only knew the half of it. All right. Anything else you'd like to share before we get out of here? Since we've been pretty concise, even for us by Monday show standards.
No.
All right.
I think we're good.
All right. On that note, the level of energy and enthusiasm through the roof for Payne.
I think you're asking for like a personal thing here, like a George Costanza.
No,
what is it?
I was not asking for a
I
personal
hate peas,
thing.
but I love pea soup. What were you looking for?
I was not looking for anything personal. I was not asking you to talk about the plumbing in your place, about clogging toilets like a special teams coordinator or anything along those lines. So on that note, I don't know what the hell happened on this show, but thanks to Billy as always for contributing an actionable element for our prop. Not sure what the listeners learned from this fine program today, but that's not going to stop us from calling it curtains on a Monday Week 10 NFL show. So for Payne Insider, I'm Todd Fuhrman. Best of luck with all of your investments on the Rams and Dolphins tonight. We'll be back with you on Wednesday. A little college football. NFL resumes on Thursday, but in the meantime, hopefully we'll see you at the window.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Bet the Board. Make sure you follow Todd and Payne on X. Todd is at Todd Fuhrman. That's TODDFUHRMAN. And Payne is at Payne Insider. That's PAYNEINSIDER. Don't forget, our weekly newsletter comes with an additional best bet. Have that delivered to your inbox by clicking the link atop the podcast show notes. And most importantly, subscribe and download Bet the Board. We're on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Wondery, YouTube, Google Podcasts, and all your other major platforms.